Okay, I was just wondering, I've talked to a bunch of you already today, and first of all, I just have to say, can I use that? I may or may not end up keeping this. Thank you, everybody, for being so welcoming. I'm a newbie in this space, not new to drugs or cell and gene therapies and other areas where I've worked. I worked for GlaxoSmithKline for 20 years, but new in this space. So I'm really trying to learn as much as I can and help the company that I've been with now for about a year and a half to figure out how to navigate. And that's my goal. So Evren, how many people have heard of Evren before today? Okay. Oh, good. 5 or 6. Does anybody know how the name Evren relates to what we do? Jojo says nerve spelled backwards. Okay, now you guys can't ever forget it. First of all, I just wanted to say we are another device which does transauricular vagus nerve stimulation. And I think the ultimate goal for all of us here is to make all the boats rise with the water. And I know that I've talked to a few of you today about how we can work together. So I appreciate those comments. What we've been doing for the last year and a half at Evren is working on the FDA breakthrough device designation, which came in 2021, gave us, and that was based on our pilot clinical trial results. You can go ahead and switch that. And I wanted to start out just and give you a sense of who the people are in the company and why we're working on what we're working on. I'm not going to go over just the first two, but Weaver Gaines is our CEO. He had to be away today, so he asked me to come and fill in for him. And he's got 40 years of experience doing this. He's a retired lawyer. He says a recovering lawyer. And he has worked in 3 different startups. And this is he'll be 80 years old this year. And the reason he took this company was because it is his passion in life to get the technology into the hands of veterans that need it. So he's a Vietnam vet, and this was his goal, to get this technology into their hands. Neil Iuliano, our chief technical officer, has 7 devices that have been cleared by the FDA, 40 patents, and has an incredible team of engineers. We're always looking for more good people to join the team, for sure. And everyone else here has 30 years at least experience. I've got 35. I was counting it on the plane the other day. I can't believe I have to say that in the industry. We can move on to why Evren focuses on PTSD. Actually, if you go back one, James, it's a devastating disease. It's a devastating condition. And unlike Blythe, I wish I could talk about something that everybody here knows about, memory or Alzheimer's, but this is kind of special. And if you aren't in an area where you know people that have this problem, this mental condition, it's really devastating and it stays with you the rest of your life. And I think you guys know it's a mental problem that changes the physiology of the brain. So you are stuck for the rest of your life with these symptoms. And you can go ahead, and I'm not going to read through them all, but this is typical of PTSD. It's very phenotypically different from person to person, but the rates of suicide are very high. Unemployment, homelessness are obviously a big problem. Go ahead, James. And just to sum it up, I put up a quote from a firefighter who said nothing in his whole career, after going for years being burned almost to death 4 times, had ever been as traumatic for him as living with the symptoms of PTSD for the rest of his life. So it's a very emotional kind of place. It's a very large market, about 12 million Americans, which is what the VA estimates. 15 to 20% of military, firefighters, police, healthcare workers. And did the pandemic help the rate of PTSD? No, it's obviously tremendously increased the rate of PTSD. People you wouldn't think of, women, 1 in 9 women have suffered some type of sexual trauma or other type of trauma. Not everyone develops PTSD. It depends on your neurobiology and your genetics, and also your childhood traumas and other things. But it's a huge problem and growing. And then our technology, as everyone knows, is pretty exciting. TAVNS is kind of a newish thing. Somebody said it's only in the last few years that this ball's really been rolling. I've been doing some clinicaltrial.gov searches, and just the last 3 years is where you've seen this tremendous explosion of trials with looking at TAVNS. And our product is something that people want and they will pay for. And I'll get back to why I say that in a minute. The current treatment gap. Okay, there's these 12 million people, total addressable market. How many of them can we potentially even sell to? A good 2/3 of them. Most people that try to get treatment, they don't get relief. Only about 12% of patients actually get relief from current therapies. Current therapies include SSRIs, drugs, cognitive behavioral therapies, and a host of other things that are mindfulness type based things. The treatment gap is the people who never seek help. So many veterans don't get treated in the system, or they don't have access to mental health care in rural areas. They just don't get help. So it's millions, 9 million people. And I am certainly not going to talk to this audience about the autonomic nervous system in any way that would help you learn something. So my goal was just to summarize this and say the autonomic nervous system is basically at the heart of PTSD. It's the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. You can click one more. And you're having a problem with your sympathetic nervous system if you have PTSD. That's the bottom line. You kind of get stuck in this fight or flight response. And it can give you different kinds of symptoms, but this is definitely the issue. And with TAVNS, as you know, there's been many studies looking at how it increases your calming, your sympathetic, parasympathetic system. So I think everybody here is pretty comfortable with that information. So what is Evren doing? We have developed a research device, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And I brought one with me. We finally have the device and the earpiece. And why is that special? The device is just a stimulator. However, it has a few features that are really nice compared to what's out there for research devices at the moment. It will measure impedance, and it will tell you whether the earpiece is in the right place. So your electrodes contact the ear. Is it the right place? If not, take it out, put it back in. And that's going to help your researchers get good data. What do researchers want? Good data. And this will help with that. Sorry, I keep looking up here, but I have to see what I'm looking at. The earpiece is when we actually went up and spoke to Timur Datta at the Feinstein a couple of months ago, and he was very interested in the earpiece because that's a big challenge. How do you get the electrodes to contact the ear in some way that is sufficient for the electricity to go through the skin and reach the vagus nerve? And that was a challenge that our engineers took on and came out with a soft silicone molded earpiece that has 2 electrodes. Kind of fits in your ear like an earbud. The whole idea that Evren had from the beginning was to try to develop an earbud, which would be a stimulator. So this is the first step in the process. And the research market, this device is actually going to be ready in about 3 months. It's fully programmable. We'll be able to change frequency, amplitudes and frequencies of wavelengths with the program. And trying to think if there's anything else that's important about the earpiece. Originally, the earpiece was going to have a PPG built in, which would allow for monitoring of heart rate variability, which we had talked about doing in this system as a closed loop system. The inventors are 3 professors at UF, and their goal was to have this to be a closed loop system. So I know we had a talk on closed loop today, and ideally this would go to that route if we got funding to develop the rest of it. We have advanced features in the software, which are not yet functional, but those advanced features would allow triggering from an external device, as well as bursts and trains and other things that people that we talked to in the space were interested in us developing for them. They wanted a device that would do a bunch of cool things, and we wanted to have a great research device. So I think that's enough about the CR100, and that would be used under IRB approval. That would not be cleared. The next device that is in our pipeline will be the consumer-facing device, whole different ball of wax. And that goal of that is to have a clinical trial, pivotal trial. So the pilot trial was 12 patients, and I think the next slide talks about it, so I'll wait until then. But yeah, we would be looking for 2 million, at least 2 to 5 million, the first part of that being for the P51 development and clinical trial. So the data for this, our particular technology, not TAVNS in general, but just our data, was 41 total patients in 3 studies over the last couple of years. The original one was the 3 inventors at UF. They did a randomized controlled sham study looking at the effects in PTSD. That was a startle response study with a tilt table. And they had good results, and they showed increased vagal tone, and then that's what got them excited to start the company of Evren. The next study was the safety study. So Evren started the safety study with 7 patients and healthy volunteers, looked at AEs, adverse events, no AEs. And in 2021, finished the pilot trial. That was 12 patients and the 92% responder rate and 4 complete remissions, which is not up on that slide. 4 complete remissions in PTSD population made me pretty excited about that data, and the FDA as well. A 95.5 net promoter score. That's kind of a marketing thing that says you would tell your friends about it and buy it. What was really great, you can go back to just one slide, James. Every single patient wanted to keep their device. 70% of the patients joined the advisory board, the patient advisory board. We have about 50 or 60 patients now on our patient advisory board. They all want this device. All right, we can go to the next one. The next slide is really just to show you we have IP, and I'm going to skip right past it. So just if you wanted to talk about IP, be happy to talk to you about that. Not me. We have an IP director. And I'm going to pull a Mayberg and just keep going. No, you're fine. Yep, the next one is just milestones. So the company last year, we actually received a $50,000 grant from MTech to install a QMS system. We ran a start engine equity platform campaign online and raised $250K. We've actually gotten $500,000 non-dilutive funding from an SBIR grant, which was an Army SBIR, no, Army STTR, sorry, Army STTR and an NIH SBIR. And that was to develop the device. And then the STTR was in acute stress. So that's been helping us in the last year or two to continue development. You can go on to the next slide. So STTR last year, we actually have selected a CRO and written a protocol for our pivotal clinical trial following the Free Spirit model, 55 patient clinical trial. And that's going to the FDA as we speak, probably to review. And we are this year seeking an A round as well as launching the CR100 to the research market, hopefully completing a pivotal trial. And of course, we're always pursuing more grants. And you can see the other milestones up here. So these are our plans for the next few years. There are lots of options out there for PTSD, but we think this option, and I love to talk today about combination therapies because this is a really critical question for all of us, is how do we get the right people the right things? I would love the answer to that question if anybody knows, but that is a very key question. But we think the TAVNS with no side effects, unlike the drugs, and certainly can bring so many benefits to so many veterans. So we are the only company that are focused solely on PTSD. And the solution is safe, it's effective, it's used at home, it's portable, and it's IP protected. So this was what makes Evren unique in the space, we think. Projected revenues of $51 million with 2 devices coming online by 2028. That is what this slide says, and 5.2 EBITDA. Sounds like it. And why am I here? I was looking for companies in Gainesville to work with and things I might be interested in. And this is the reasons that I'm here. And you can put up the next slide. And really just the patients that we've worked with and helped. Of course, that's what keeps all of us going. So I think everybody relates to that. So you can move on. The summary slide. And I've opened, as you guys have already offered some kind things to me today. I appreciate that. And would be very open to discussing any collaborations or thoughts you have on our technology. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, if you can stay up there. And let's see if we have any questions here from the audience. Anyone on Zoom? Oh, we have someone.
It's well known the vagus nerve is involved with the parasympathetic system on the descending branch. But to my reading of the literature, a lot of the latest studies on the ascending branch of the vagus nerve to the brain show it has an arousal effect and cause behavioral activation through activation of the norepinephrine and acetylcholine system. So I was just curious how those two interplays affect someone with PTSD.
Could you use the mic?
I don't think I can answer that question. I'm sorry. I just don't think I can answer that question. I'm not qualified and knowledgeable about the literature enough to be able to do that. I'm so sorry. Someone in the audience might be able to.
We're running a VNS PTSD study right now, where with the gamma-core device, but the idea is to look at the basic science behind it as opposed to pairing it with a therapy. However, Doug Bremner and their group had a DARPA-funded trial where they paired it with prolonged exposure therapy, and that essentially the thought is that you can have the subject, confront the trauma and go through that trauma through a script or through a guided process. And then essentially the salience of the negative salience is associated with that is not decreased because of the vagus nerve, but the learning effects that over time you can decrease it substantially were expedited. So you can, and you're exactly right. You have norepinephrine release, you have acetylcholine release. Actually, if you look at target identification, multiple different studies are showing that vagus nerve stimulation actually causes you to pay more attention to a negative stimuli, right? So it's good for soldiers who are looking for a target. And it's in healthy controls, we're seeing that it's specific for because of that noradrenergic wave that you get when you see something that's arousing. Vagus nerve stimulation actually amplifies it a little bit more. So you have more salience to these negative aversive stimuli. But the thought is that you just improve learning over time, agnostic to the learning task. And in this case, the task is prolonged exposure so that you can deal with the trauma.
And the results we saw in our pilot trial, they got better over time, as everyone seems to be saying. The first month was a small response, and then the second month, there was a much larger response.
Okay, and one last question I'll throw at you, Christine, has to do with reimbursement. Now, in our last session this afternoon, we're going to talk about reimbursement, and particularly with some of the new guidelines and levels that have come for non-invasive stimulation. But it seems to me, as with other companies in the non-invasive neuromodulation space, looking for reimbursement, there's three possible pathways, or at least three in the US, and that would be CMS,
Right.
that would be private insurance, and that would be VA. And it seems to me for your indication, VA would be probably at the top of the list. Is that what you're looking for in terms of your priorities?
Yes, the first go-to-market strategy would be with veterans for sure. Obviously, a very obvious target market. Many of them will pay for this device, not the research device,
right,
but the consumer device for sure. So yes, obviously.
Okay.
And then follow on with first responders and healthcare and things like that.
And do you think you'll be able to achieve not just a faster reimbursement path, but maybe higher levels through the VA than you might through private insurance and or CMS?
It needs to be FDA cleared for the VA to look at it. So we have to clear that hurdle first.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, yes, we definitely expect the VA to be very interested in the data because they're going to want data. So
Okay.
understandably.
Well, thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you.
Great talk.